in listen-only mode.
Hello to everybody and welcome to the plan reading webinars as part of the Hospital Inspector Certification Exam Preparation webinar series. Last week, we presented the mechanical and plumbing webinar, and there was a question about a better explanation of the airflow question. We sent an email, but if you didn't receive it, please let us know by an email at oshpd.fddisu@oshpod.ca.gov. If you are here for the electrical part one, this is the first part of the electrical plan reading. The part two will be this coming Thursday at the same time at 1 p.m. On Thursday, we'll upload several PDF. In addition, we will also upload extra practice questions. So at every discipline on the past, we uploaded on Thursday these additional practice questions. We did for architectural, we did for structural, we did for mechanical and plumbing, and this Thursday we will do for the electrical, and next Thursday, the following week, we will do the fire life safety. If you didn't receive any or you didn't participate on the past webinar and you would like to have this information, please email to us at oshpod.fddisu@oshpod.ca.gov. If you are not sure you should be on this webinar, please send us the question or any question into the question tab. The tab is located on the toolbox on the right-hand inside of your screen. Write the question there and we will answer. Today, for your use, we have uploaded some handouts. To find them, go to the toolbox on the right-hand inside of your screen as well. Under the handout, you will find uploaded PDF files, and you will find this presentation that you see on the screen, the plan reading part one. You will find the architectural and electrical PDF portion of the plans to use for this presentation. You will find also the tips from the expert, a guide for working on projects under OSHPD jurisdiction. And again, I repeat that if you missed any prior presentation, feel free to email us. Don't worry about the email address that I keep repeating. You will see in the end of the presentation. So don't go in panic if you are missing to write it down. You are here for roughly 30 minutes of presentation, which it will allow us to fill your questions. And since we will be presenting this webinar in an open mic format, you will be paused throughout the presentation to answer the questions. So if you have questions, please be sure to raise your hand. And how you will do that? You will be using the GoToWebinar raise hand feature next to your name. We will then unmute you so you can unmute yourself and speak into your microphone so we can have a discussion. We will try to answer all of your questions, but if you don't get to your question or if we start running out of time, go ahead and send the question to oshpod.fddisu@oshpod.ca.gov. Next, if you are experiencing transmission difficulties, don't panic. Go ahead and log off and then log back in by using the same login information sent to the GoToWebinar. And we will do the same if we are experiencing the transmission difficulties on our hand. For today, we have Jamie Usnik, OSHPD Senior Electrical Engineer, Bill Gao, OSHPD Senior Electrical Engineer, and the ISU Inspection Service Unit team. Jamie and Bill will answer to your electrical questions listed into the question tab, and Jamie will also present the examples that we will go through the presentation. So that being said, let's start with the presentation, and please stay engaged and keep the GoToWebinar window active. So let me change the slide. Let's see if this works. Perfect. So the electrical discipline will have two parts of the exam. We'll have the code and we'll have the plans. The code will have for Class A, 10 questions, and Class B, 12 questions. Let's see an example for electrical code questions, and just to let you know, this question will not be used for the actual exam. The question reads, hold on a second because I need to see better. In elevator, dumbbell waiters, escalator, moving walks, platform lifts, and stairway chair lifts, a sump pump located in the elevator hoisty way should be permitted to be cord connected. The cord shall be a hard usage oil resistant type of a length not to exceed blank and should be protected from physical damage. There are multiple answers, and in this case, there is 3 feet, 6 feet, 8 feet, and 10 feet. So, how to arrive to the answer? The electrical code has chapters, like other disciplines. What you need to do is to look for the elevator, dumbbell waiters, escalator, moving walks, platform C20. So what do you need to look for? You need to look to the cord connection, and it means you should look into the wiring method section. So under the Article 620, you need to look for wiring method. And it is on the part tiny answer for sump pump and it's highlighted in yellow. The cord should not exceed 6 feet as it is highlighted, and that basically is the answer. Now, because of the raising hand, and this is one of the examples that we are showing you, please raise your hand if you have any question for this specific code question. And let's see if I can see if anybody has raised the hand. And so far, I don't see any question. So I will continue the presentation. For the plan will be for Class A, 13 questions, and for Class B, 9 questions. Before to go through the examples for the plan reading, we want to share, like we did for all the other prior webinar, a few things. So for who participated to all the webinars for all the discipline, what we are going to say is a repeating portion, but some of you didn't participate to these webinars, and so we are happy to repeat the information. And the reason of this type of webinar is to guide you to go through the right process for the exam. So let's analyze the questions with the correct responses, how to read them, how to interpret the question, and how to write to the response. Sometimes the approach is easy and sometimes it's not. And this is exactly what happens into the actual construction process. Remember, the plans are not perfect, and this is why RFIs are always in process. What do approved construction document content? They have the original approved set. They have RFIs, like I mentioned before. They have no material alteration change, and they have material alteration change. The information can be anywhere in the drawing, but usually the overall information is like this. General information of the project may appear on the drawing title sheets, and some specific information will be contained in drawing details and also in schedules. This is an example of how a table of content is. You can see here the different disciplines. And this is, of course, in the overall with the different categories that you can have in the set of plan document. Each discipline contains general information like symbol legend, abbreviation, general notes specific for that discipline. They have also plans, elevation, sections, and those also on different scale of drawing. And then there are details, scheduling, diagrams, and sometimes also 3D. In the example that we are going to show you, you can see the different disciplines. The main one is the cover page, the general notes, and the UL assembly. Sometimes the UL assembly are included in the specific discipline, and sometimes the UL assemblies are in the general drawings. So again, you need to be flexible to navigate through the set of drawings, because not always a specific information is where you're thinking. Today we're going through the electrical discipline, therefore we are going to show you what are the disciplines that are relevant in order to answer to the plan reading questions for electrical portion. And the electrical relevant drawings are, of course, the electrical discipline. Under this discipline, you can find schedule, tables, floor plans, enlarged plans, sections, details, and also you might need to look into seismic restraint discipline as well. Something that we would like to remind you is what you need to look in the drawing. You need to look into notes, keywords, typical details, general notes. But most important, you need to look sometimes all the discipline because, again, is the entire set of drawings. A good project provides all the discipline that they talk to each other. This means that sometimes some information that you might think it is on the electrical plan set of drawing is not. So you might look into other discipline. That being said, Jamie, if you would like to unmute yourself, and I will change the screen.
All righty. Thank you. So the sample project we have is a surgical specialty hospital. I'm just going to flip through the pages with you and talk. Typically, it's a good idea to orient yourself with the drawings. So as we saw, there's the different disciplines: architectural, mechanical, electrical, plumbing. If we zoom in on the index for electrical, we'll see that it follows a general format that was discussed: the schedules, legends, lighting floor plan first, power floor plan, systems, electrical roof, the single line, and the panabore schedules. One thing to note is they have the option of including the low voltage in the electrical set, and in this case they did. So that's the system drawings. Sometimes you'll see that there's a separate low voltage index. All right, if we start to flip now back to the electrical sheets, I'd like to just kind of take a few minutes to orient you to the sheets. So as we go to the questions that help us to know what's in the set, where we might find our answers. Life safety, obviously, is the exiting plans. We look at the electrical, we'll see on the first sheet, light fixture schedule, our sheet index. And we can go ahead and move to the next one. Over here, very important is our legend symbol list, the definition of all symbols that we see throughout the set. Go ahead. Next sheet, please. I'm sorry, we just went pretty quick, but there was a equipment connection schedule that
Did I go back?
Yeah, if you go back one.
Of course.
So, yeah, so we'll see. This is an old set. It's called Mechanical Division 15, but it has a mechanical equipment schedule. It has owner furnished. Typically, this would be the medical equipment. If we go one more sheet, here we see kitchen equipment. So by looking at this, you kind of get an idea of we've got roof equipment and then some more medical equipment. So this kind of helps you understand how the different sets are going to integrate. Here we've got a site plan, exterior site lighting. It looks like there's some service equipment here. Then we move to the lighting plans. And this is part A of the first floor. There's part B. And you can see the legend down below where that is. And then there's the second floor, lighting part A. Second floor lighting part B. So now we know it's two floors. We know there's an A and a B, and the power is going to be set up the same way. So we see first floor part A for power, first floor part B, second A, second B. And now we look at the systems. Again, this is typically low voltage. It could be fire alarm, nurse call, paging, TV, data. And we see an overall and there the systems has a part A, part B on the second floor. Then we see the roof plan. So mechanical equipment located on the roof. We see that where that's going to be. Again, part B for the roof. Then we see some blow-ups, enlarged electric room plans. You'll see this one on the top right is an enlarged large-scale kitchen. So we know there is a kitchen component. Typically, that's very dense, and so they consultants like to blow that up so we can see all the scope. So that's good to know where that is. All righty. This is basically all your main equipment layout, and this is important to take a look at if we're following the single line and looking at clearances and sources. Here's a portion of a one line. It just shows how everything is connected. It's got a seismic restraint chart. Here's a single line. They basically use the Dapper Captor output from SKM Power Tools and use that as their single line, which is fine. This looks like that was normal, and this is probably emergency. And then we'll see some mounting details. Take a look at heights and separation and how everything is oriented on the mounting. We'll see some more details. Here we see the pole base detail. We'll see sign lighting detail, various installation details. So we might need to look at that. And then here's the panel schedule, shows all the circuiting. Basically, that was reflected on the power and lighting plans is now input into these panel schedules.
Okay, so now
right.
let's jump
Thank
to
you.
the examples. Go ahead.
Yes. So the first question is MATV outlet for floor-mounted television shall be installed at blank inches above the finished floor. So a good place to start. Master MATV stands for Master Antenna Television. Where could we find the outlet? So if we look down, remember we talked about the systems. So we want to focus on system drawings to see where the MATV outlets are and how they're mounted. So we go to the next sheet. We'll see, let's take a look at the systems in a typical patient room. We have this TF symbol. Now, that might be obvious that that's MATV, but if we go ahead and take a look at the simple list, you'll see the legend on the left is a low voltage, and at the very top, there's a blow up down on the bottom. So TF is for the MATV outlet for floor mounted TV. And the listed mounting height is 1 foot 6 inches. So our correct answer would be at 1 foot 6 inches, which is the same as 18 inches.
Thank you, Jamie. So now let's see if anybody has a question about this example. Please raise your hand and we will unmute you. Don't be shy. And if you're shy, you can write the question on the question tab that the ISU team and Jamie and Bill will help to read.
Yes, again, we want to encourage everybody to raise your hand by clicking the hand icon next to your name. We'd be happy to call on you. If you raise your hand, we'll unmute you if you can unmute yourself.
Thank you, Caesar. I don't see anybody. So let's go with the second example. Jamie, you ready?
Yes. And we're just stepping through every up a little bit different. I'm just trying to show you the logic of how you would find it. So this next one is a blank shall be used as the steam sterilized controlled disconnect means for the steam sterilizers serving the OR area. Now, when I paged through the drawings, we could have looked a little bit, and normally I would, and see what areas are on what floor, but we'll see in the overall life safety plan on the first floor, there's the sterilizer room, 1C22. So that looks like that's going to be area B on the power plan. And if we take a look at area B on the power plan, we will see in that sterilizer room, there's branch circuiting and there's notes. And if you look at the notes, note number 2, which is in that room, says 120 volt, 1 phase, 20 amp connection provided for steam sterilizer controls coordinate with equipment vendor. And then number 3 is first and install single pole switch, flush mounted in a single gang box to service steam sterilizer control disconnect. So there we go. Our answer would be the single pole 20 amp switch.
Thank you, James.
As you can see, it was a little tricky because you had to look at note 2 and 3 because the single pole switch, and then the rating was called out on number.
And I'm looking if there is any raising hand, and I don't see any raising hand. Yes, I see. Alexander, I will unmute you, and please unmute yourself. Alexander?
Yes, thank you so much for taking my question. Last week, you informed us that the plan section of the exams is going to be by each discipline. It's not going to be random. We'll go through each section of each discipline. And I just had a question for the code portion of the exam. Is it the same way, or is that going to be completely random throughout all the disciplines, or is it going to be discipline by discipline?
Is divided discipline by discipline. And to connect to what you're saying, on March 30th, we are going through this process for the exam. So if you didn't register for March 30th, we are going through the process for the exam. So please, if you didn't register, register. Will be again March 30th at 1 p.m. Let's see if there is any other hand. Raising hand. I don't see. Let me check. No. So, Jamie, let's go with the third example.
Alrighty. Third example is talking about RTUs, rooftop unit number 6, shall be fed using a blank voltage, blank pole, blank amp circuit breaker. So the RTU, there's a couple places for us to look. We can certainly look on the roof because we know there's a rooftop equipment plan, and that should give us some direction. Another place that we could look would be back on the up in the front of the set. There was the mechanical equipment schedule. So if you look at this, if you zoom in the middle bottom is the mechanical equipment schedule, which identifies that it's going to be 480 volt. Actually, I take that back. This is just to zoom in on the panel schedule. So we're looking at this panel schedule. We saw the home run on the other sheet. When we trace the home run, we're at circuit number 6, and we see there's a 15 amp 3-pole breaker. If we look at the voltage on that panel, it's a 480 277. So we can go ahead and select number A because that's 480 3-pole 15 amp breaker.
Thank you.
Just to look at it, we see it's 15.3, and then you see below that there's 2 dashes. That's just telling you that is, out of that panel, you have the option of 277 single phase. You have the option of 480 3 phase, which is what we're looking at here. There's another option of 480 2 phase, but we won't see that in these plans. So really, you need to look at the breaker and the voltage and then make the proper selection.
Very good hint. I like that. Thank you, Jamie. So if anybody has a question for this example, please raise your hand and we will unmute you. Let me scroll through the names. I don't see any hand.
I will talk on the bottom. I mean, I'm trying to teach you to look at this holistically, and since you will have some time to concentrate on electrical, if you go through the set and get an understanding of it all, you can see how much time you would save. if you went the other way on the bottom left, where you just go through every panel schedule until you find the RTU 6, you could see there's 3 pages of panel schedules with over, 10 panels on some of the sheets. And so just kind of by setting yourself up correctly and looking at the big picture, you can find it's on the roof, you can find the circuit there, and you could get it that way. Obviously, if that doesn't work for you, go back to the hunt and peck method.
Right. Always remember to be flexible. So don't be stubborn for a specific logic, because there is always another way to arrive to the answer. I'm scrolling down and to see if there is any raising hand. I don't see. So Jamie, if you're ready, go with the 4th example.
Alrighty, thank you. So how many light fixtures in patient room 2B12 are required to have dimmer switches? So the first thing that we can do is go ahead and look at the fixture schedule up front. I mean the legend up front, and you'll see on the right is power and lighting, and it's highlighted, circled, and enlarged. And you'll see that the symbol on this job is a switch, an S with a D next to it. The reason we do this is that while there are general simple conventions, all the engineers use a little twist on each one. So you need to go ahead and go back to the single list to find out exactly what they're using for a dimmer switch. Sometimes it could be a box with a D in it. This case it's a switch. So then we go to it's switch for lighting. So we go to the lighting plan. We know it's on the 2nd floor, and it's either A or B, and it turns out in this case it's in the B floor plan. We find the room, we circle it, you can see that that's enlarged, and we look through the room and we see there's a switch as you enter the room with a D, a dimmer switch there, and there's a switch on the back wall with the dimmer. And everything else is all the other switches we see are not dimming. So the correct answer would be 2 dimmer switches in this room.
Thank you, Jamie. And if you have any question about this example, please raise your hand. Brian, I see you raising the hand. I'm unmuting you. Please unmute yourself.
Yeah,
Brian?
thank you. So I guess I read this question is how many light fixtures in the patient room are required to have dimmer switches, not how many dimmer switches are there in the room. So, to me, I would be counting those downlights that are on the dimmer switches. That's
a good
how I'm
point.
looking at it.
Yeah, it's a valid point. Ideally, the engineer would have had, an A next to each switch and dimmer is controlled. So in this case, they figured that it was intuitively simple, and so I don't disagree with you. One thing, we do need to be light on our feet. If we look at the answers, unfortunately, the way you presented it, it would be four fixtures with dimmers, correct? The 351 downlights, and then the other one against the window.
The number 16. I would count it as 1, 2, 3, 4 51s, and then that's 16. So I would have 5 fixtures. So I would have said none in this particular case. Well, I guess none's not the right answer either, though, because it would be none of the above would technically be the right answer, I guess, in my mind.
Well, that's a good point. If we look at the door when you walk in, there's 2 switches. One of them is highlighted as a switch with a dimmer, and the second one is just a straight switch. So it appears to me that the number 16 fixture is not dimmed, and that it's still the same answer, is that we're coming up with a number that doesn't match any of the available. And so I think you have a really good point there. I think if I was looking at this, I would arrive at the 2 just by a process of elimination. But because the other 2 downlights do need to be switched, and it would be clear, and this is, I know it was pointed out, maybe not so much for the exam, but yeah, this would be a great opportunity for an RFI to come back and say, could you clarify which switches are controlled by the door dimmer? But I don't disagree. That's a very good point. We'll take that into account.
Yeah, I think it's more just, for me, it's the way that the question's asked. You know, I think if it's how many.
Yeah, you're right. I was reading it wrong.
Yeah.
So Brian,
Yeah, you're reading it to the answer. I was reading it to the question. Yeah. Thank you for acknowledging that.
So Brian, thank you for the question, and to connect for what you're saying and what Jamie also explained, since that during the exam you cannot answer you cannot issue an RFI, we have the opportunity, and for this one again, we will go through on March 30th, there will be on the Scantron a column with the challenge answers. So if, for example, you, Brian, you think that this one's supposed to be 5, you will write to your the hands again if there is any other question. And I don't see any questions. So, Jamie, let's go with the last example.
Alrighty. The concrete base for light pole fixture number 38 shall be provided with blank vertical reinforcement bars and number 3 ties at 12 inches and extend blank feet below grade. So, as you recall, there's 2 things that we saw previously is the site plan, and then if you remember, there was a detail at the end of the sheet for pole bases. So when we zero in on the site plan, we see the 2 fixtures, number 38. We can go ahead now and either take a look at the fixture schedule. Yeah, we're looking at the fixture schedule now, and you'll see on the fixture schedule, all the fixtures are listed. We remember that was at the first one of the first sheets in the set. And for fixture number 38, it has a note that says type 4 distribution, 12-foot pole with 2-foot base. Okay, now we have that information. Let's go back and take a look at the pole base schedule. And the pole base schedule says that for poles, 15 foot, and in this case, that would mean 15 foot and less, you're going to have a depth below grade for your footing is going to be 5 foot, and vertical reinforcement is going to be number 6s. We see circular ties are number 3s, 12 inches. So the question was, the concrete base for number 38 shall be provided with blank vertical reinforcing bars. And just since I just learned my last one, let's check carefully. And we come down the vertical reinforcing bars, and we see the number 6. And then extend blank feet below grade, and we come over below grade. Was that 5 foot 0 inches? So there's your answer.
Thank you, Jamie.
One thing to point out is that, for instance, that was 12 feet. If you have something that's 18 feet, which doesn't show up here, you're going to have to go down to the 20-foot pole and use that, those requirements. And in this case, they are the same, but if it's a little bit of a trick because it doesn't exactly match the pole height, you go ahead and consider that up to 15 foot, up to 20 foot.
Thank you, Jamie. Let's see if anybody has a question. Raise your hand. Let's see. I don't see any question.
Hey, Monica. This
Yes.
is Joe Labrie. I just wanted to mention to the group, Brian's question was an excellent one, and as Jamie pointed out, and as Monica reiterated, I want to express something to you all who are going to be taking the exam. ISU is not out to get anybody. We're not trying to trick anybody. So if there's a question like that, it's simply that when it was written by whomever wrote the question, didn't necessarily have the same logic in their mind at the time that the question was being asked. So any question that you feel that might fall into this category of gray area because of the way it's worded, I would encourage you to challenge it with an explanation. Don't just say, "Oh, this is too hard, I can't do it." That's not going to fly. But give us the reasoning behind what you're doing, and it will be considered when we're going through the grading of your exam. Okay?
Thank you, Joe. Thank you. Thank you for this additional information. So I'm going through the raising hand, and I don't see any raising hand. I don't know if I'm scrolling too fast, but I don't see any raising hand. So that being said, what will be next is that on Thursday, this is a homework that is not an obligation for you to provide to us the answer. It's just as a practice for you, and see if with the logic, the guideline that we get to you, you will feel that you can provide the answer. You can send the answer to us. And finally, here is the email that we kept saying from the beginning, oshpod.fddisu@oshpod.ca.gov. So here is where if you want to, you can send to us your response. On Thursday at 1 p.m., we will have a webinar, which will be way shorter than this one, because we will go through only about these two questions, the homework that, again, let me show you here. An important part is also that on Thursday, we will upload additional extra questions for practice. So if you want, you can download them as well on Thursday when we will upload them, and you can continue with your practice. And if you have any question, again, you can email us at oshpod.fddisu@oshpod.ca.gov. Again, so electrical part 2 will be on March 18th. Then fire life safety part 1 will be on March 23rd. And fire life safety part 2 will be on March 25th. And the instruction of the IOR exam, what to expect during the exam, it will be on March 30th. So in order to register, if you didn't do yet, go to our website, oshpod.ca.gov. Under there, you will go to Building, Safety, and Finance. And from there, you will go to Form, Training, and Resources. And once you are there, you go to Webinar located under Training, Education, Presentation, and Webinar section. You will scroll down to the Inspection Service Unit, and you will find Hospital Inspector Certification Exam Prep Plan Reading section. And there you will select the webinar that you would like to register. Then this concludes, if I don't see any raising hand, I don't. So this will conclude our presentation for today. And we want to thank you for your interest in becoming a certified inspector of record with OSHPD, Office of Statewide Health Planning and Development. So until next time, like usually Cesar says,